name is Yvonne. I'm the co-director of operations at the Forge. Welcome to the Forge, everyone. All those who are present here at the venue, molweni namkelekile, and also those joining us through the live stream. Thank you for joining us. Today I'm going to be directing the program and facilitating the youth discussion. I will also talk about why we're gathered here tonight, what the mandate of the Forge is, and how you can support our work. I'll start with why we're gathered here tonight, and then move to the mandate of the Forge. Lastly, before I sit down, I will introduce the first three components of the program. Tonight is the launch of the Pamoja Project in Johannesburg, a collaboration between the Embassy of Sweden and the Forge. On Pamoja, the Embassy of Sweden, in partnership with the Swedish Institute and Lily Sleeve Foundation, has developed an interactive, online, web-based experience called Pamoja, which combines a digital exhibition on solidarity, partnership, and friendship between anti-apartheid activists in South Africa and Sweden, and conversations with young activists of today. The decision to center intergenerational conversations and international solidarity in the Pamoja Project relates to our mandate here at the Forge. We believe that our current context is such that we are confronted with and constantly struggle against various connected atrocities, including imperialism, racial capitalism, hybrid wars, landlessness, unfreedom, and many others. As such, we have to adopt various strategies of struggle, as did our internationalist political ancestors, using cultural work, declarations, dialogue, writing, teaching, protest, etc., as tools to intensify and lift our own work, as well as to build international solidarities. The Forge adopts the tradition of multidisciplinary, multifaceted, and internationalist work. As the Forge, we are grateful that with this collaboration on the Pamoja Project launch, we are able to learn from our very own struggle veterans, while we also have the opportunity to talk about our own struggles as young people living in South Africa in the current dispensation. So that is why we're here tonight, and that is the Forge. I did say that I'm going to talk to how you can support us here at the Forge. We are the Forge on YouTube and on Facebook. We are also the Forge JHB on Instagram. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also follow our work, engage with us, challenge us. We'd love to engage with you. Thank you. I did also say I'm going to introduce the first three components of the program, and they are as follow. We are going to first have the Deputy Ambassador Ami Lasson Jane, who's already on the podium, who is going to introduce the Pamoja Project, followed by a virtual message of support by the CEO of Lily Sleeve Foundation, Nick Wolpe. The third component is also another virtual component, which is an introduction video to the Pamoja website by the Totem team. I'm now going to hand over to you, Deputy Ambassador, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So the day has finally arrived when we can introduce to you the Pamoja website, which is a celebration of the partnerships and the friendships between South Africans and Swedes that form the basis for Sweden's strong support to the struggle. It's been created in partnership with the Liljesley Foundation and the Swedish Institute. Pamoja is the story of international solidarity during the struggle, and it teaches us about the work of government, civil society, journalists, cultural actors, churches, trade unions, academia, and not least individuals, how they acted on their values and principles in partnership and friendship with anti-apartheid leaders in South Africa and elsewhere. As far back as the 1960s, a countrywide Swedish anti-apartheid movement arose. In the early 70s, we were the only Western country to give official political support to the anti-apartheid movement, as well as massive financial support. In 1978, the Swedish government banned any further business investments in South Africa, despite the presence of several large Swedish companies here. There are many Swedes who remember from their childhood or early years how they were involved in this movement. I had a friend who, when I told her I was coming here tonight, she said that her brother-in-law remembered as a 5-year-old going to nursery, and for the morning assembly, he stood up and said that Nelson Mandela had been freed that day. And our own ambassador, in fact, he was a political activist as well. He remembers standing in knee-high snow town in southern Sweden, protesting against Shell's involvement in South Africa and Namibia. But Pamoja is not just a historical exhibition. It is about you and me, it's about individuals and communities, and it's about our shared responsibility towards each other. It is in fact a starting point for conversations with youth today about the global challenges that they face, what causes they are passionate about, and how agency and democratic activism can be fostered, and what youth today need to feel empowered, supported, and to create change. When I arrived in South Africa 3 years ago, I felt immediately the warmth and the friendship from South Africans. This is part of the wonderful South African culture, but it also reflects a deeper bond with a country so far away that stems from the crucial efforts done by South Africans and Swedes in collaboration to make a difference and to bring human rights to all South Africans. As official representatives of Sweden, we at the embassy become the representative also of the commitment to human rights and democracy and the bonds formed between our two peoples during the darkest times. It is with the greatest humility that we carry on this proud legacy. The veterans' groundwork makes the embassy's role in South Africa so much easier. As Nelson Mandela said in his speech to the Swedish Parliament in 1999, we thank you and thank the millions you represent for making it possible for us to say unashamedly that we have a true friend whose name is Sweden. And the feeling was entirely mutual. Today we are working very hard at the embassy to earn our place in the line of Swedish friends of South Africa and of South Africans by developing our collaborations in fields such as sustainability, gender equality, and of course, as partners for democracy and human rights on the global stage. And with that, I thank you and hand over for the rest of the program.
Hello everyone, my name is Nicholas Wolpe and I'm the founder and CEO of the Liljesley Trust, and it is a pleasure and honour to be here to be able to briefly talk about Pamoja together, because Pamoja forms a critical component of our international solidarity legacy projects, because it's important that we do not forget, that we ensure that we remember the important role that the international community played in supporting our struggle against apartheid. But beyond that, the support the international community, or shall I say elements of the international community, gave other African countries in their struggle to free themselves from colonialism. So Pamoja forms a key and critical component in Lily's Leaf's drive and determination to ensure that we do not forget. In fact, our byline is the struggle against forgetting. And that is the new battle we face today. It is a new battle which is real and which is happening as I speak. Therefore, Lily's Leaf feels it has a moral obligation to ensure we do not forget, but also to highlight what can be achieved, what can be accomplished when we come together, Pamoja, when we come together, what change we can bring about. They are crises. We have a crisis around climate change, inequality, poverty, which Covert has highlighted. And the only way we can address these crises is if we come together, Pamoja. This is the purpose of this wonderful, dynamic, online exhibition. And the purpose also of this exhibit is to try and inculcate and ensure that the generations to follow recognize, learn, and respond appropriately. As it's often said, if we don't know where we've come from, if we don't know our past, we are doomed to repeat it. And again, I think it's also important to mention that the fathers of international solidarity are Olive Palmer and O.R. Tambo. They became the symbols of international solidarity. They became the voice of international solidarity. So it's important that we keep the message alive. And today, Lily's Leaf is not only a historical site that tells the story of a very critical and important period in our liberation struggle. Lily's Leaf is a symbol of what good leadership is, what good leadership means, what it means to be a good leader. Because Lily's Leaf was fortunate in that it had so many great leaders come through the doors of Lily's Leaf. And what did they display? They displayed one thing above everything else: selfless commitment, sacrifice, dedication. Their own aspirations, desires, and wants took a back seat. And that goes to the root of what a good leader is. They were there for the good of the all, to bring about a better life for all South Africans, regardless of colour, to ensure that the subjugation of the majority, purely because of the colour of their skin, no longer permeated South African society. So generations who will come to Lily's Leaf and who will visit whether our physical exhibits or our online exhibits will learn, will get to understand and appreciate what it means to be a true leader, a leader that is committed to bringing about social change, social justice, and equality for all. And in concluding, I would just like to thank the following organizations who made this possible: the Swedish Embassy, the Swedish Institute. But ultimately, without Totem, this project would not have happened. It was the commitment, dedication, hard work of Totem and the team that ensured that this magnificent online exhibit was achieved and realized. Thank you.
We told them to unite behind the science, but they didn't listen.
Today we take a stand for the climate.
Hello and welcome to Pamoja. Together change is possible. I am Sam, the Lily's Leaf Legacy Program Manager. Please also meet my colleagues Amanda and Bea, who will be taking you on a short journey through the site. But first, some insights into how we approached the design. Given that the target audience is 18 to 35-year-olds, we needed for Pamoja to resonate visually, draw them in, and quickly establish its intended purpose. As you can see in the films you just saw, we used contemporary graphics as the backdrop to this historical context. The second film then drew heavily on current global issues to link solidarity past with present. We took care to ensure Pamoja is clearly perceived as non-partisan. The interface allows for a variety of users, so from those who like to skim through and get an overall sense, to users that like to really engage and dig deeper. Pamoja can be explored using most browsers via your computer or mobile device, and is accessible via the Lily's Leaf website, Virtual Tours tab, or through the link that has been posted in the chat. We hope you make time to explore Pamoja after today's event, and please do share the link far and wide. A note before I hand over to Bea and Amanda: as time is limited and the site vast, we will only be giving you a taste of the experience, and in most instances will play a portion of the film clip selected. Over to you, Bea.
Hello everyone, I'm Bea Roberts, the Lily's Leaf Legacy Team researcher and writer, and it's been a wonderful experience to work on this project. You are now in what we call the Solidarity Room. It is essentially the heart of the site and where you can decide on the journey you want to take. It gives you the option of diving into the history of Sweden's involvement in decolonization and liberation, the solidarity stories, or you can choose to look at what young people today are saying about solidarity in solidarity conversations, or you can find out more about some of the organizations that are working to bring about change today. But let me pause on the solidarity stories for a moment, because that's where Pamoja's origins lie, and where we hope you will be as intrigued and inspired as we were. We strongly believe that we need to know our past in order to understand our world today and to help us navigate a future that is at best uncertain. This is why the historical component of Pamoja is quite extensive. At first, we thought we'd simply do a quick overview of Sweden's involvement in each country, but the stories we found as we started researching were simply too fascinating. And unlike a physical exhibition, this virtual space allows us to do that, to go into a lot more detail. That said, there's clearly much more to uncover, and we hope that you will go further and dig deeper than we have. Developing the historical narratives involved interviews with veterans of the anti-apartheid movement, which was an incredibly enriching experience. It also involved desk research, obviously much of that online, but the resource I really want to point you to is Tor Sellström's monumental study over 3 volumes, Sweden and National Liberation in Southern Africa. It was an absolutely indispensable resource, and for any of you doing research on Sweden and Southern Africa, you simply have to go to that link or to those links and investigate for yourself. Tor Sellström himself was quite an indispensable resource. We interviewed him a number of times. We also believed that it would be important to offer information in more than just English, which is why you have the option of navigating the site in Swahili and in Portuguese. While Sam shows us or takes us through, shows us how to navigate the solidarity stories, just a word on writing history. The historical narratives on the site are complex and often contested. Some of you might disagree with how events and people's actions have been portrayed, but of course, history is rarely straightforward. It depends on who tells it, where they got their information, what experiences they've had, and what they believe. However, in the end, what we want you to do is to continue to explore these narratives. What we're offering you is merely a taste of the rich history of Sweden's involvement in Southern Africa. We really hope you will want to find out more and continue the conversation. Now let's take you on a very brief tour, starting with Sweden. We're on Angola, we'll go to Sweden. And we're going to look at a little video clip in the category, which one are we going to do, Sam? We're going to do, how did Sweden show solidarity?
Decency, humanity, a sense of pride that they participated in the most meaningful act in their lives, a liberation of an entire region. Because their fuel created countries which were not there before.
That was Lindiwe Mabuza, who is one of the key individuals in the story. And yeah, just a fantastic character who spent decades working in solidarity. So just about that, the issue we had to think about quite a lot is which individuals to feature on the site, because we know there are thousands of ordinary men and women who make history, but who never make it into the history books. So in Africa, we opted for individuals who had specific links with Sweden or who were figures of national and international importance. But because this is ultimately a project about Sweden's involvement, we had to look at which Swedes were involved, and the decision about who to include or not became really tricky. So in the end, we opted to include as many people as we could find a little bit of information on. But we've only scratched the surface. There are still many, many people missing in this story. We pose this to you as a challenge. If there are Swedes who stood in solidarity, people you know about who have not been mentioned here, family members, friends, colleagues, please let us have their names and a short description of their involvement so that we can add them to this list of 90. We loved compiling this list and finding out about all sorts of people who I personally, most of them I'd never heard of. And we were just blown away by the stories of solidarity and bravery and commitment. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Amanda so she can take you into solidarity conversations.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and I'm here to tell you about the thinking behind the focus groups. For us, it was important that tomorrow's leaders helped define Pamoja's framework to ensure the site would resonate with them and the challenges they face today. It also created a sense of shared ownership through their participation. We held focus group sessions with young people from the countries featured on Pamoja, where they shared their thoughts about the world today, reflected on the meaning of solidarity in the past and today, and how international solidarity can make a difference. You will notice the newsfeed along the bottom of the screen. This helps locate Pamoja in the present and for visitors to connect with current issues at any time. There is a chat function on the bottom right of the screen for facilitated events. Comments from the chats will be harvested and loaded onto the site to keep the conversations contemporary. Now, let's watch a clip of our focus group participants discussing what solidarity means to them.
Solidarity is collaboration, solidarity is working together, and solidarity is a common goal for a common future for the betterment of everybody.
Solving these problems we have, challenges in the world together as one, that's solidarity for me.
Solidarity for me means to cooperate with the people, individuals around you for a common, better future.
I think knowing that they're not alone, that you're not just in your corner going through your problem.
Leaving no one behind, and mainly looking at how us as individuals can actually add value.
The focus group process also revealed the need for Pamoja to be able to connect young people to organizations locally and globally on issues relevant to them, like youth-centered challenges, gender-based inequality, poverty, the environment, as well as to, in some way, signal the role of music and art in connecting us. So we added the Solidarity in Action page onto the site, where visitors can see what people around the world are doing and find links to relevant organizations and institutions. The participation of activists and future leaders was further facilitated by the embassies in each country, who identified activists who shared their thoughts on issues specific to them. This has also helped amplify their voices and presence on Pamoja.
And I believe that the greatest challenges facing the world today are ableism, intolerance, and an unwillingness to learn. And I've seen these manifest as great obstacles to international solidarity, because if you can't trust people at home or listen to people close to you, how then can you do the same with people who are a country, an ocean away from you? But through opportunities such as collaborations across borders with like-minded people, people who understand that difference is something to be celebrated, I have seen the value and the power of such collaborations in breaking down barriers.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Bea. It has been wonderful to be part of this extraordinary collaboration between the Swedish Institute, the embassies of Sweden, and Lily's Leaf. The process itself has, in fact, been very reminiscent of what it takes to stand in solidarity, in that it has required enormous commitment, time, energy, stamina, perseverance, and patience from all involved. We thank the Swedish Institute, embassies of Sweden, and Lily's Leaf for the opportunity, and everyone here for your time today. We look forward to Pamoja Walk.
Thank you so much to Deputy Ambassador Amy Larson Jane, who gave us the introduction to the Pamoja Project, and also in absentia, Nick Walper, the Lilith Leaf CEO, and the Toten team. We're now going to move to the next part of the program, and that is the veteran address. That is going to be given to us by Mama Makhosazana Xaba. As Mama gets ready, I'm going to tell a little story. I said to Rosanela Ma, whatever you do, let Uma title her own talks, because she just gives the most superb titles and the most fantastic addresses. You can see probably by the smile on my face how excited I am that she's going to be giving the veteran address tonight. So we're very happy, Ma, and thank you so much. The title of tonight's veteran address is Fighting from Many Fronts, Lindiwe Mabuza's cultural and literary contributions to the struggle for liberation. I'm now going to read a short bio of Umama Makhosazana Xaba. Makhosazana Xaba is an anthologist, essayist, poet, and writer of short stories. Her poetry has been anthologized widely and translated into isiXhosa, Italian, Japanese, Mandarin, Setswana, Turkish, and her edited anthologies have been translated into Spanish. She holds an MA in creative writing from Wits University. She grounds her work on feminist politics. Let us please all welcome Mama Makhosazana Xaba. Nkosi.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Yvonne, for that intro. I think what Yvonne forgot to say is that Lindiwe Mabuza was supposed to address you tonight, but she's not well. She's very sick. So I was asked at the last minute to stand in for her. So instead of giving the kind of address that she would have given, I thought I would talk about her and the role that she played in this international solidarity so that you get a sense of the veteran that was supposed to be addressing you, because I don't think I'm anywhere close to being a veteran. Just from a show of hands, how many of you have read her poetry? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many of you have her books? From 6 we went to 1. How many books do you have? 1. I ask that question because a lot of people know Lindiwe Mabuza as the diplomat in South Africa, because 1994 happens, we know she's the minister, and then we know she moves through through many countries as the ambassador. And that's the kind of profile that a lot of people have, which is why I decided I will not talk about that. And I want to focus on her cultural and literary contributions to the struggle. So, very briefly, she was born in 1938 in Natal. I don't know if people remember that. We used to call that province that. In Natal. And went to school there, was in Johannesburg for some of her schooling, got her first degree in English literature and isiZulu. Now, I mention that because it becomes very important, because once she gets the Fulbright degree, Fulbright scholarship, and she goes to the US, she ends up with a master's degree in American Studies from the University of Minnesota, and also another master's degree in English and Literature Education from Stanford University. So At the time, she is approached by the ANC to be part of the ANC. She was an assistant professor of literature and history at Ohio University, Athens. So it was in 1977 where she agreed to join the African National Congress. She left the US and went to Zambia, where she worked as the ANC Radio Freedom broadcaster. She broadcasted daily from Lusaka, Zambia, into South Africa. How many of you ever listened to Radio Freedom? These glasses and the light. 1, 2 hands. Okay. Did you ever hear her voice? Anyhow, I have a passionate connection to Radio Freedom because I also worked as a broadcaster there in the 80s, in the late 80s. So she works for Radio Freedom, broadcasting daily, and then she becomes the editor of the journal called Voice of Women. We used to call it VOW. And she's the editor. So this is the background that she had as a professional, and now she starts using it within the movement. And then when the cultural committee of the ANC was formed, she was given the job to be part of the group that forms Amandla. So Amandla became this cultural group within the ANC that was singing the most beautiful music. If you haven't seen the documentary, try and find it and watch the documentary, because it's a very good example of what it meant to use music in order to talk about the struggle. And Lindiwe was a part of putting that together and mobilizing internationally for the group to travel in the various countries, singing the most amazing South African music. And then from 1979 to 1987, she was appointed the chief representative of the ANC in the Nordic countries. And the Nordic countries, she told me 2 Saturdays ago when I was sitting with her, they included Norway, Finland, Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden. And she was based in Stockholm, Sweden, until 1987. In this position, she also did one of the most amazing, she was involved in one of the most amazing projects. She pioneered, compiled, and edited an anthology of poetry called Malibongwe. So, Malibongwe is an anthology of poetry that had women within the ANC writing poems, whatever they wanted to write about. And of course, a lot of them were about the struggle. The anthology is called Malibongwe. ANC Women Poetry is also their weapon. Now, here's an interesting history. In 1980, this anthology is translated into German. In 1981, it's translated into Danish. In 1981, translated into Swedish. 1986, into Finnish. 1987, second edition of the German translation. How many books have had that kind of attention? I think very few. But what she told me was, working through that anthology was the most exciting part of doing the work of international solidarity, because the women who were activists in all these countries were the ones behind these translations. They facilitated it, they talked to their groups, and then there was a book. So she was working with a lot of women, a lot of anti-apartheid activists in the Nordic countries, but she said to me, Kosi, a lot of them were women. A lot of them were excited that this is the poetry written by women. And I remember her telling the story of how the youngest contributor to that anthology was 14 years old. And she was shocked that a 14-year-old could be in exile. And she was shocked and worried and, concerned, because by now she's, the older sister, and she had left South Africa to study. And she says, how bad can things be? So you can imagine then women's solidarity in all these countries working with this anthology to learn about South Africa, to talk about South Africa, to raise funds for South Africa. And that is the work that Lindiwe pioneered. Did Malibongwe ever come to South Africa? Only last year. 40 years down the line, we have a publisher in South Africa who published Malibongwe. Because Uhuru Palafala made it a point that this book is also in South Africa. But it's an amazing story that needs to be told. The first speaker was talking about how we need to know our histories. When I was given the brief, I was told that you need to talk with people so that they learn things that they might not have the energy to go looking for. So when I saw that poster with those volumes of solidarity work, I thought, oh my gosh, I want those volumes in my hands, because that's the kind of stuff I like to read. But sometimes all you need to read is the poetry of Lindiwe Mabuza, which is why I was asking you earlier, because she has 5 poetry collections. The first one is called From ANC to Sweden. The second one is called Letter to Letta. She was friends with Letta Mbuli when she was also in exile. The third one is called Africa to Me. What's interesting with that collection is that it was published as a bilingual collection in English and German. I have a copy. I'm very proud. I can read a little bit of German. So that's the third one. The fourth one is called Footprints and Fingerprints, right? And the fifth one is called Tambo le Nyoka. And then there's a subtitle, which is about what the person on the screen was talking about, the connection between Olof Palme, O.R. Tambo, and Thabo Mbeki, and their role in building this international organization that was vibrant and committed to South Africa. So if you read her poems, you just think, she belonged to the world. She was the world. You learn so many things about the struggle, about other countries, about the struggles of other countries, about individuals in those other countries that she connected with or not. And I even asked her, I said, why are you writing about this river so much? So she writes about the River Rhine in this most beautiful way. And you just think, oh, you know, for me, rivers are just ordinary. I said, tell me about this river. I've been reading so much about it. And then she talks about how the office of the ANC was on in a building that was, no, not the office. I think it was her home. Maybe they were one or the other. But anyhow, she lived in this place where she could see the river all the time. And it's just a beautiful connection to humanity, to nature, to the struggle inspired by the river. And this is why I love poetry. But anyhow, so the point I want to make is if you read her poetry, you might not have to read those volumes if you're not the kind that reads volumes, because she just spreads information about South Africa and the international struggle through her poetry in the most beautiful way. And yeah, she's an amazing poet. So one of the other books that still hasn't come to South Africa, like Malibongwe, is an anthology of short stories that she put together with members of the ANC in exile called One Never Knows. I still can't get a copy myself, so when you do get it, please let me know. So look at that. There's music, there's poetry, there's short stories. What else is she doing? A lot of things. So many things that, for instance, She gets awarded an award called the Yari Yari Award for her contribution to human rights and literature. And the university that did that was the University in New York. And then she gets awarded, where's this other award that I was looking? In recognition of her contributions to literature and human rights, Mabuza receives an honorary doctorate at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. This is not just any doctorate. It's her contributions to literature and human rights. That's the connection she's making, that she was making in the most visible of ways. And of course, for South Africa, she was awarded in 2014 Ikamanga in silver, and for her contribution again to culture and literature in South Africa. So I talked a lot about poetry because I'm a poet, but she also has other books. She's published 3 children's booklets, one called Mbindi and Gogo, another one called Mbindi and the Flying Machine, the other one called South African Animals, where it's like a book that teaches children the alphabet, but she uses it through the names of animals. Now look at that range, right? Children's stories, poetry, music, this. And she has pioneered, for instance, she initiated the book that is now called Uncle Owar Tambo. Who were the contributors? Children who were in exile with their parents, and the idea was, tell us about, write about what you knew of OR. They are young adults, well, they're real adults by now because they were children then. So that was an idea that she had. It's called Conversations with Uncle Owar, Childhood Memoirs from Exile. She's also led the initiative that got together a book called The Thabo Mbeki I Know, which is this thick and has so many contributions, where people talk about how they their engagement with Thabo Mbeki from whatever perspective. It's a beautiful book, and she was behind that as well. So I think I'll stop there. But what's quite, and I just wanted to focus on that, but I want to share the idea of, now I'm thinking about the youth. I don't know how many people know about the school that was supported by Sweden and other international countries in Tanzania, where children of ANC cadres went. Lindiwe Mabuza was part of that when she was in the Nordic countries, and the school was built in Tanzania. And some of the children who wrote their memories of OR went to that school. It was called Mazimbu. So when South Africa happened in 1990, the school was handed over to the government of Tanzania. So here is another example, an African country saying, we're okay with you building a school here. We will support that. And we will work with you to make things happen. What does it take to build a school from international funds? That's not a government school. And that's the kind of work she was behind. That's the kind of work she supported. Just read her poetry and you'll get a sense of what she did. But I wanted to end with the school because it's quite an important other thing, because I think when we talk about the struggle, often we talk about people who were in exile and what happened when they came back, and then people who were in MK and how many people did you kill? It's a question that we get asked a lot. But we don't talk about education and what it meant. And often when people do talk about education, it's about, where did the ANC take you to? Oh, I was in a school in Moscow. Oh, they got a degree in German. But what happens to the children who must start primary school? How was that organized? How was that thought about? How was that put together, and how did it work? And Lindiwe Mabuza was one of the key key people in making that project happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, sorry. This is what happens with live. Thank you so much, Mama, for such a fantastic address. What I take away is that sometimes all you have to read is the poetry of Lindiwe Mabuza. Umama belonged to the world. She was the world. Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate you being here. And again, I did say she gives the most fantastic addresses and the most fantastic titles. Thank you so much, Ma. We're now going to move to the youth discussion, and I'm going to ask Tapelo Novangile to please join me on the stage. Part of the program, Namhlanje, is that we sit down and talk about our own struggles as young people. And I have with me Namhlanje, Uvangile Ganjo, and Tapelo Muhapi. I'm going to be in conversation with them on the youth discussion on organizing and building solidarities. You know, when I was thinking about this panel discussion, I said, what does little old me, have to do or say to people who have spoken so much about, many important things, Uvangile, about cultural workers, political work, and Utapelo on land activism. But then I remembered, how gracious both of them are, and I trust that we're going to have a wonderful discussion. I'm going to read Vangile and Tapelo's bios, and then we're going to go straight into our discussion. Molweni, come up. I'll start with Vangile Ganjo's biography, then I'll move on to Tapelo's. Part water, part dream, part impepo. Vangile Ganjo is a healer, poet, publisher, and unwavering advocate for the revival of the Black feminine. As a teaching artist, she has traveled the continent and abroad for literary events, festivals, residences. Ganjo is the author of 2 poetry collections, Undressing in Front of the Window, 2015, and Red Cotton, 2018, and holds an MA from the university currently known as Rhodes, 2016, where she's also a part-time lecturer. She was named one of the Mail and Guardian's top young 200 South Africans of 2018. Her work has been published in various literary publications, including Wild Imperfections, 2021, New Daughters of Africa, 2019, the Atlanta Review, 2018, New Coin, 2017 and 2018, New Contrast, 2017, and Illuminations, 2017. As a producer, Ganjo has facilitated the staging of multiple poetry plays and online festivals, including the Impepo Press Women of Words Poetry Festival in 2020, a Virtual World Poetry Day in 2020, and co-curated South Africa program of Unbound International Spoken Word Festival 2020. That is Uvangile Gancho. Asemqhubelele izandla bethu. Utapelo was born in Matatiela in the Eastern Cape and raised in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal. He's the former General Secretary of Abahlali Basemjondolo Movement, South Africa. Prior to that, he was the chairperson of the Breeding branch in Durban within the movement. Abahlali Basemjondolo is a movement that fights for land, housing, and the dignity of the poor in South Africa. Tapelo has represented Abahlali on many national and international platforms. Under his leadership, the movement of Abahlali grew from 13,000 to 55,000 members in a space of only 3 years. As a result of this growth, he's faced many attacks from the ruling party and was forced into hiding. He worked for Difuna Ukwazi, an NGO that campaigns to advance urban land justice in Cape Town. He is currently the national spokesperson of Abahlali Basemjondolo and an advisor to the National Council of the movement. He believes in two things that can change the lives of South Africans. He believes that it is only when people are democratically organized from grassroots that the political frame of the country will change. He also believes that South Africa needs selfless leaders in order to change the status quo of corruption. That is Tapelo Mohapi. Welcome, Tapelo and now Evangile. I believe in having honest conversations. And I'll start by an admission that I am incredibly anxious and nervous to have this conversation. So the person who is having a conversation with you is in that state. Yeah, gone. So, but what I wanted us to start with is this idea of the assumptions that come with living in a democracy. The assumptions about rights, the assumptions about freedoms, assumptions about dreams, assumptions about potentialities, assumptions about excess. You sometimes find that most times find that there's a disjuncture between what is assumed to be how people live in a democracy, which is what our veterans were fighting for us. But that has not translated to the many of our lives, particularly the working class and the poor in South Africa. So I wanted us to start talking about those assumptions. And the question I want to pose to you is really, what is your analysis of South Africa's democracy in the now, where you're sitting? I will start with Vangile. Vangile is already looking at Tapelo. Actually, I will start with you, Vangile, and then we'll move to Tapelo.
Sama Queen. Thank you for having me. So first of all, ndicela ukhululeke because you know, if we're going to speak frankly, we must speak frankly. Yabo? I think when we think about democracy, we think about something that's far away, or something that's big. But democracy was won, if it was won, by people. Even in the introduction, Babesity, there are millions of stories of everyday people who are not featured, who are not known. And so that is who democracy belongs to. It belongs to Ighalam Kumayeye, it belongs to Umtana Wam, it belongs to Umzuglwana Ozayo, Mhlambe Kamamkosi, it belongs to your great uncle, it belongs to all of us as individuals. And when we say that, we have to then own it. And if we are to own it, we must do a number of things. The first is, on a big scale, we must hold political leadership to account. And not just at the voting polls, okanye ngoku xa sizawuhamba siyovota if siyavota. And I'm not saying people should or shouldn't vote. I'm saying that the importance of democracy is beyond the voting polls. Funeka xa befika, I mean, I remember there was a time where an old woman wagxotha politicians zizo campaign wathi hayi benifikile na last time themba work amanye amaxhagwazana. Because so basically she's saying that you came here 5 years ago, made promises. Are there no other old women you can lie to? And so we need to be able to hold our governments to account. But beyond that, and I think the biggest thing for me is that we have lost faith in democracy to the point where we don't own it and we don't own our own living circumstances. So beyond democracy is xa unomhlaba kutheni uzahamba uyothenga veg at Pick and Pay.
Sure.
This is something that you can do. If you have a community and you can see the drugs are coming into our community and our children are falling by the wayside, why are you not starting after-school projects okanye izinto to keep the children entertained so that they have somewhere else to go? This is something that we can do. This is not something we have to wait for government to do. And I think that's my interest. And I think I've lost a lot of faith in politicians. But I want us to start taking ownership as people in our own living conditions. Singalindi uMasaya ozawufika in green and black and yellow.
Tapelo, thank you. Vagile talks about ownership. Asikwazi ukukhalaza kokoko. So beyond ukukhalaza, what do we do? So again, what is your analysis adding on to Uvangile?
Sanbonan. First and foremost, thank you very much to the History SC Vilengo Mama Ulindiwe Mabuza. It gives us, as young people, hope that there are still people out there who had in their mind thought about where we are going to be and where we needed to go to. But I must say that I'm speaking today after the release of Abahlali 6. 6 of our leaders were arrested on wrongful charges, kept in Westville prison, the most dangerous prison in South Africa, for 6 months for just organizing themselves. Speaks about not really relying on the state. But in the province where I come from, when you organize outside of the ANC, when you organize a commune, when you organize your own food sovereignty, when you organize your own chicken poultry, when you organize as a community and you try to not rely on the state, you are treated as somebody who's creating a state within a state and someone that needs to be dealt with. And dealing with has meant that 19 activists in Abahlali baseMjondolo today have been killed. So Ikenana has become a hope for us. It has become, there's a communal garden where people look after each other. There is a communal poetry which started with only 12 chickens. Today they have more than 300 chickens. They have a communal tuck shop which sells fruit and vegetables. And that communal profits is shared among the community, and those who are very vulnerable, the women and the child-headed homes, benefited from that. What does our government do? They fabricate cases against the leaders who are promoting that, and they put them 6 months into prison, as we have known now that all these cases were trumped-up cases. So that's what happens in reality. When in 2009, our president, who is the current winner of the Per Enger award from the Swedish government, when they were organizing a drop-in center where they actually looked after families in Kennedy Road, they were also attacked. 2 people were killed in an attempt to assassinate the president of Abahlali baseMjondolo. And that is because they were accused of creating an authority within the authority. They were accused of creating their own authority in Kennedy Road. Their crime was actually to say, because the government is failing us, let's do things on our own. Let's become the stewards, our own stewards of our own development. We can no longer rely on our government because our government has failed us. So people continue to live under very inhuman conditions in 27 years of democracy. Where I live in Bryden, we were gutted with fire. The people who were coming from other countries, who were born from other countries, the eThekwini municipality made it open that they were not going to receive any building material because they are not South African. Now you say that South Africans are xenophobic. It is government, it is our own government that is xenophobic. You cannot defy and isolate people because they are in a country and they don't that they don't belong here. This thing of us having a document defining us, who we are, where we come from, it's totally wrong. So that's why in Abahlali baseMjondolo, in the movement where I come from, we say umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. A person is a person wherever they find themselves and whenever they find themselves. And one day we will visit to these other places and we must treat these. So that's what we believe in Abahlali baseMjondolo. But in closing, I want to say we have fake democracy. There is no democracy. The politicians in this country are enriching themselves and their families. Look at what happens during the state capture. Look at what happens in the midst of a pandemic. 500 billion disappeared. Nobody cares about the poor. We don't have toilet where I live, but the ANC-led government in the eThekwini municipality gave the Mpisane family team, soccer team, 15 million rand. So you see, when our leaders prioritize other things that are not necessary and not necessity to us, it means that they don't care about us. We have become banks for votes. The only time you will see politicians in the informal settlement, and they will be surprised by the inhuman conditions that we are living in. To some extent, they would say, we did not know that South Africans were living under these conditions, as if they were living in another island. So the only time they will come and carry our kids, the only time they will come and help us and see us as important is during these elections. So we have fake democracy. There is no democracy in South Africa.
Sure. So I'm listening to the two of you. Uvangile says we must take ownership. And then Utapere is saying, well, when we do take ownership, we face incredible repression, in the most crude way, trumped up charges, but also people lose their lives. And this was not the fight. This is not the things that we should be inheriting. So then let's get into the crux of it. Because Tapelo, for Abahlali to grow in as much as it has, Abahlali now has over 100,000 members, right? With all of this repression in these various forms, it must take a great level of organizing and resilience. Ne? Share some of that, because we want to then go home and learn from some of these lessons, right? If we're going to then say, if you're going to take caution Vangile and Vangile's advice to say, well, what are we doing about it? And then if Tapelo is going to say to us, well, this is what we are doing, but this is what we face. We then want to know, how then have you kept the movement growing? So what lessons can you share with us about the level of resilience and the level of organizing that Abahlali have managed to do in the years that it has been, the 16 years that it has been a movement?
Sure. Thank you very much. One of the things that I believe in is that there's a famous quote by the Black Consciousness that says, "Black men, you are on your own." And I have realized that we are indeed on our own. The level of corruption that is in this country shows that our leaders do not care about the marginalized in our communities. And as Abahlali Basemjondolo, we have built a political conscience that first and foremost people should need to understand what poverty is and what keeps us poor.
Yeah.
And that we are being impoverished. Yeah. The country is rich. We have state-of-the-art stadiums, airports, and everything. But go to the informal settlements and see that deep, abject poverty. There are people who go to sleep without food. When we were going on the ground, we have seen people cooking white plants in order for them to survive during the pandemic. People who went during the unrest, who went to the shops to take food, did not know whether there was a former president who was arrested. Some of them went there because they were told that you can get that food on your table this time around. People have been starving for quite some time. So this thing of representing our country in the way that has been represented internationally, it's high time that we come out of the doldrum and say, look, this is not what it seems like. We have been going around using our membership, trying to buy food for many families in our food solidarity campaign around the country within our members. And we have seen the deepest poverty, the deepest disservice in our countries, people with no water for weeks in some of the places in Mpumalanga and in KwaZulu-Natal as well. So these are the things that need us as grassroots people who are grounded to go and see and put them out there so that they be known. So our movement, as you have asked, we are actually a movement that believes in democratic processes from below. We have our branches who have meetings once a month discussing issues, because what we believe in our movement is that we believe in what we call ipolitike philayo, the living politics. So the living politics, people talk about other politics, like right now people are saying, vote for me, I'll do 1, 2, 3, vote for me. But in Abahlali, we speak about the real politics, the living politics, that right now we have no land, right now we have no water, right now we have no electricity. That's right now it is not us who needs water. Our bodies, our lives need water. It's the most essential thing that is needed. And in most cases, when people go and blockade the road, the first thing that comes out into the international stage is that people in South Africa are actually rowdy and they're causing unrest. But We have tried for many times to engage with the ANC government. We have tried for many times to have them speaking to us, not about us. Because in most cases, what happens when you are living in a shack, people tend to think that your thinking mind, your mindset, is at a stage that it cannot think. They hire people who live in Umhlanga, in Sentin, to come and think and finish for people who are living in informal settlement. They do not talk to the people in the informal settlement. People are the stewards of their own freedom. And when you discuss, you must discuss with them and speak about them and allow their views. And that's what we are doing in our General Assembly, which we are having every month in our Hlaliba Mjondolo, because we get to listen to what people are saying. Before releasing a statement during the unrest, we took a view that we are not going to say because Jacob Zuma was arrested and therefore there was an unrest in Durban. We went around into communities and say, what made you to go and take food out of the shop? And that's when we came and said that people's anger can go in many directions. And this was one of them, because people have been subjected to hard lockdown, to the pandemic. People have already, we have 42% unemployment rate, 75% are young people in this country. The majority of them are living in informal settlements. Yeah, we are in a hopeless state. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we are in a hopeless state. This brings me to you, Vangile, again. You talked about in another interview about politics being your biggest heartbreak. And I mean, that stuck with me, together with the fact that I have heard you do, I expect more from you a number of times, and every time it evokes a different emotion. The first time I heard it, I said, yo, I feel very validated. Because, you know, sometimes you get the question of, who are you? Where were your parents? You know? And one way, thanks to Umam Kosi, one way I then understood it is when she talked about, you know, this idea of loud visibility. You know, that we also need to begin to tell our stories. And every time I hear, I expect more from you, the first time I felt validated. The second time I felt angry. I was like, yo, no, no, man, we expect more. This cannot be it. You know, are we going to die poor? When are they going to hear us? Are they ever going to hear us? And if they do not hear us, what are we going to do? And then, again, I read something by Kianga Yamata Taylor, an activist and a writer and a teacher. She was talking about symbolic firsts. And she was cautioning about the fact that, you know, we always want to take it to symbolic first. And she was saying, well, it's important to remember where we come from and we talk about our history. But it's also important to know that symbolic first have not necessarily led to the same benefits that a few enjoy to the many. So when I read that, I immediately also went back to, I expect more from you. And what you said about politics being your biggest heartbreak. Maybe can you talk to us about writing, I expect more from you, and you know, whatever you want to share with us, you know, however the Spirit moves you to talk to us about, I expect more from you. Maybe you can share some of your thoughts on I expect more from you.
Marcus, you know, I think I think Utapelo has done a fantastic job talking about I expect more from you. I think everything that he's saying is a reflection of where that poem was written from. By it's the everyday people who contributed to the freedom of this country. By waking up every single day and making sure that their children are fed, and making sure that their children naganjani go to school. And it was, these freedom fighters, they had families that propped them up. There were people who were doing the paddling underwater to make sure that they can sit in these fancy thrones, and some of them just appeared in 194. But so I'm not. I don't really want to speak about I expect more from you, because I think that we can get stuck in this place of darkness. And I think that what's important is to celebrate the triumph of the human spirit. Uba abahlali bomjondolo exist and continue to noba kwenzwani, like as in even against all the brutality that faces them. People are saying, we are here, the system isn't, because we must understand that the looting that we see on TV is systemic. Iqala phezulu le looting, and it then translates into the looting of shops, and so the looting, the rot runs deep.
Yeah.
But what I think and without in trying to be careful, but also I think about Inkosi Amampondo, who was arrested, and Amampondo had Amahashi, and they had one extra horse, and they went to the magistrate's offices, and they surrounded it, and they said, "Sizolanda Inkosi yethu," and they put him on the horse and they took him. When we live in a democracy, we understand that we live under a social contract, and the contract goes two ways.
Yeah.
When that contract is no longer fulfilled, the contract is no longer valid.
Yeah.
It is null and void. And I think as I was Tetela Londo, that is where I am sitting from.
Sure.
The social contract has been broken. As Abantu, we are on our own. We have ourselves to pick up.
Yeah.
We have ourselves to fight for, and we are the only ones who are going to rescue us. And that is going to start in small communities. Bazawufika bachitha amanzi, we will build again. Bazawufika bayikhabe, we will build again. And but also it is very, very, very important that you never ever think that you can step on a person forever.
Yeah.
If anything, this government should know that. Uba ukwazi unyathela umuntu nomphelo. When the anger of the people comes, it will come. And if we know anything, and we know just that fact, Tina, we keep building, stay low, keep firing, keep building.
Yeah.
But our anger, it's going to go somewhere.
Sure. Our anger is going to go somewhere. Sesizawuvala ke bethuna. Sesizawuvala. I really don't want it to end, but it has to end. I mean, I'm so glad you said that, Vangile, just as we were about to move, because I find myself angry most of the time. And of course, people will say, why are you angry? You have a degree, you have a job, you have this and that. But I always say, if I have all of these things, why do I feel like I'm working into a hole rather than out of it? Because I've always, I feel like either I mean, deep water, I'm trying to swim to the shore, or I'm going to drown. That's just where I am. I don't many times feel happy. And the expectation is that when you have these things, you're supposed to feel happy because, and I acknowledge, having these things in these times is very difficult for many young people. But I often feel like I'm working myself into a hole. And for me, I would say, personally, it's this idea of being born into poverty. And so there is no national plan there's no anti-poverty national plan. So it's true what you're saying. If you drown, you drown. But I don't want us to end on that note. I want us to end on what you said about the triumph of the human spirit. And we are about to end. The triumph of the human spirit. And I want us to then sihlale kulondo and talk about the importance of organizing and building solidarities. Because asikwazi uba in different pockets everywhere. We have to find a way to work together. I think in that way will be more impactful. So as we are ending, can I have the both of you's views on what is the importance of organizing and building solidarities? And what is the impact of being intentional about those two processes? Oh, okay.
I'm so glad you asked that because, I was sitting here watching these stories, these many, many different stories that are all interconnected somehow. And then Umam Kosi said, what does it take to build an international school that doesn't belong to a government?
Yeah.
And that's what solidarity is, ne? I think the biggest trap we can have as black people is to think that we've made it.
Yeah.
Because the burden of your family will always follow us, because there is no single black person who comes from nowhere. There's no person who comes from nowhere. And I say black people deliberately, and that's why we feel the weight of what is it called, black tax and survivor syndrome and all these things, where you live in your house, but you feel like people only want you for money. Every time they come to you, bafuni mali. That's because when you are a symbol of hope,
That's
so true. And so to continue living in that cycle would be to forget the people you come from. And in fact, it breeds that black tax, and it breeds the dependency if you do not remember you come from somewhere. And I think when we think about solidarity and working together, we must always come from that viewpoint about wherever we are. We must be thinking about how do we build in a way that benefits the larger, and I'll say black community because this is where my heart is.
Sure.
If I am sitting in an accounting firm, what am I doing to make sure that I'm not the only one, I'm not the first one, I'm not the last one? How do I make sure that not only is the door left open, but when they come in, agazukulwa the same struggles that I am fighting? That something will be better, something will be easier, something will be more worthwhile, and therefore will lead to a better, to more fulfillment. So that nathi sizofika kula self-actualization we're triangle. But the Maslow's hierarchy, that's the one.
Sure.
Sorry. But we want self-actualization. And so we need to be working in these spaces. And so we think about it as if we're working in isolated pockets, but we're not. if we are determined, if we are focused on how do I uplift the larger black community wherever I am, then we are working in solidarity. This is how we are building together, even when we are building in different places.
Sure. Building together, even when we're building in different places. Maskabe silungise questions. Let's prepare questions for both Uvangile and Tapelo. There'll be time for questions and comments as we wrap up. Tapelo, coach?
Yeah, sure. I become emotional when I think of solidarity, especially international solidarity, because my comrades are out today. It wasn't because suddenly the system in this country was better, but it was because of international solidarity. Comrades who marched outside the embassies in Berlin, all over the country, in the world, in the African region. So we've always believed in solidarity within and solidarity and international solidarity. Because our lives have, as I was thinking about the struggles, and because a lot of people ask me, why are you in this struggle? My father and my mother died in a shack, and I became an inheritance of poverty. But I'm in this struggle because I don't want my children to tell the same story. Yeah. Even if they live in shacks one day, but they will have a story to tell about their father, to say, at least our father fought against this and tried to get out of this situation. Yeah, but solidarity has been very vital. When we were attacked in Kennedy Road in 2009, there were times where students had to put our comrades into hiding in their residential places when they were facing attacks. When people were killed in Kennedy Road, the president of the movement was in one of the universities, but catered for by students. And we understand that those students, it's not because they were rich, it's because they were also understood the situation that we are in. And I think solidarity that is practical is very important.
Sure.
We have seen people outside courts demanding justice. When people of different struggles come together. In Durban, we have what is called the coalition of the poor. Those who are in environments, those who are flat dwellers, even the street traders have come together and say, let's form a coalition of the poor, where we, all the poorest of the poor, because when we work in isolation, it's easy to identify. Let's deal with Abahlalwa Semjondolo, because they are the ones who are organizing all these marches. But if they are to deal with the coalition, where there's a street trader, there's a Umhlalwa Semjondolo, there's Umhlalwa Sefletin, it's difficult to actually divide that, because it becomes broad. It does not speak about one struggle. It's a coalition of the poor. We are poor because of the conditions that we are living in. We are poor because we are subjected to these. In Durban, the so-called MK veteran, you say some people appeared in 1994. There were MK veterans, some of them were born in 1984, who drove migrants, workers who were selling fruits and vegetables to survive in West Streets, and said that they must go back in their country and sell in their own streets. And even said that who goes into another country and sell fruits and vegetables, we want to take over this. And this was encouraged by the ruling party and supported by the ruling party. And nobody condemned the act by these young people who call themselves MK veterans, because we know what MK means, and what we know the real MK, what it stood for. And of course, that's why we are in solidarity. We are working with the Congolese Solidarity Campaign. These are people who came to this country, who came to our office and said, we are here because our resources in our country have been stolen and they've been taken away from us. Democratic Republic of Congo is rich. Can you help us to go back in our country? Nobody wants to live away from their home. And we understood from that we need to, in any way, fight against xenophobia or any act of xenophobic that takes place in our movement. So that's why when you go to my community in Bryden, you'll find that there will be someone from Mozambique, from Malawi, someone from Zimbabwe, who have their own land, their own structure. Because this struggle is not for us, it's for all of us. Yeah. And we must all unite and fight against a system that is, its aim is to oppress us.
I mean, I don't have anything else to say. Vangile and Tapelo, have said everything. Tapelo talks about practical solidarity. Vangile talks about thinking about the bigger Black community. And I think now I should really just open the floor to people who are also here and would like to have a conversation with both you, Vangile, and Tapelo. So if there are any questions from the floor or comments even, please, the floor is open. You can have a conversation with Vangile and Tapelo. And someone is also going to be helping me with the questions coming from all the people joining us through the live stream. I believe Mbali has my phone where I will be getting the questions and comments. Comrade Mbali, can bolege comrade phone. I now open the floor for questions and comments. Thanks, Thabo.
Molweni Bahlali. Hello, good evening, everybody. My question is simple. I'm still processing, by the way. I want to understand whether it be in the bigger conceptual, philosophical, spiritual thinking, or in the practical, on-the-ground, everyday navigation of solidarity, where do we find the balance, the very fine balance, to refill our cups? Because in this work, we've heard in the last 30 plus minutes that there's a lot of brutality and a lot of dehumanizing and a lot of chipping away that's taking place. And from a philosophical, spiritual point of view, that takes away from you and the ability to focus on the express goal and the ability to execute that daily act of solidarity, that ethics of care that we remain building. We keep building even if they destroy it all, burn it all, right? Because Tapelo said something incredibly striking when he said, everybody has their reasons. Anger will ensure that people do things for different reasons. And that's what struck a chord with me when I thought, when do we refill our cups? When do we deal with the traumas that are chipping away in our ability to not just focus as a collective in the daily acts, but also in the spiritual, in the philosophical, groundedness that comes with the work? I hope I'm clear.
Is that a question to Vangile Mos?
Oh, both of you.
Oh, okay.
I'm so glad you asked this question. It's a very important question, I think. I think that if we look at the history of this country and the current state we're in, if we look at the levels of gender-based violence, if we look at the levels of violent crimes that we experience in this country, it's testament to having no breathing room and having no ways of, and without using the woke self-care idea, but having no ways to replenish, to refill this cup. We're walking wounded, and it is visible. I think of, and it may seem like it's connecting the dots, but please just bear with me. I think of Dadwam in my like a Pehlweni, and I said to her, "Oh, I'm so tired. Don't you just want to go on a holiday or something?" And she said to me, "What's that?" And she just laughed at me. She's like, "Hi man, avukile zinto zenizikhumshileyo," because there was no concept of what it meant to go on holiday. But xa siya entlombeni and sikhense, even though our bodies are tired, our spirits are refilled. And so activism cannot only be about the picketing and the fighting and the things that need to be broken. We need to put in as much energy into the things that build. And when I say this thinking about a team. When you put together a team, you need to be able to say, I can't do this right now. And someone needs to be able to take over, because we're in it for the long haul. Yabo? But it doesn't mean uti udini where you're going to go and sit down. It means that you're going to go somewhere else where you're going to be doing something different that's going to feed. So I don't and I think about if ungumntu othanda abantwana and you're constantly fighting for abantwana and you're stuck in court and you're stuck having to always interact with abantwana in experiencing the brutality of it. Sometimes you have to udlale nabantwana. Do you understand? And that is an act of activism in itself. And it sounds so ideological when you're in the thick of things. And I get that. And I get mhlawumbe ndithetha as umntu who's probably had a lot more access to different things than a lot of people. And I am fully aware of that. And in me being aware of that, I also am not apologetic for it. I bring it as part of my way of how do we then grow our languaging of activism, as opposed to how do I then discount it as something that is not important. Yabo? Because yathanda ukuthi, oh no, when with your privilege, you must bring that privilege. Sisebenzise, andithi unayo, it's here. Don't throw it away. Use it. Bring it. Because we can't change certain things, but we can affect and re-language and use. And I feel like I'm speaking so ideologically, sitting at Tanko Tapelo, but I know that when I was because I started very politically active. When I say politics is my biggest heartbreak, I was a volunteer for the ANC Youth League. I was deep within the ANC, because I come from a family with that I grew up in the ANC. So when the city ANC pule inhliziyo, I mean it in a very deep way, because ndikhulele khona. But when I realized yazi ntoni indophula umphefumulo lento, and I cannot allow that hurt to change who I am fundamentally. So if ndincedisa umuntu oyi-1 ephehlweni, I know that I'm refilling my cup. because I can see immediately some of the value of the work that I'm doing. I can't do all the big things all the time. Sometimes funeka nje uqale ngento encinci, and that's like as in so that you can see an immediate result, so that you can get some instant gratification, so that umoya wakho uzophila uthi okay, at least my hands are doing something that's visible. Because it doesn't mean you're stopping, it just means that you work somewhere else so that it can continue to feed you.
Sure. Thank you very much for that question. I think for me, what has actually, because at one stage there was a time where I was called in a family meeting in Matatiel when people were dying left, right, and center, and in Abahlali in 2013-2014. And the question was, Komalume was, do you want to die? So I wanted to do away with this and stop. But I looked at the conditions of this country. I look at my condition where I live. And I looked at people who were coming after the General Assemblies and saying, young men, the only hope we have is for us coming here and be listened to. We feel that we are important because there are people who listen to us, not people who talk and never give us a chance to speak. So the General Assembly became that space, a space where people can be open. We may not have the solution, because we don't have resources, we are not the government, we can't implement. But if somebody from a branch like Cato Crest would say we were evicted 12 times, we have 3 leaders that we have lost during the police brutality that was taking place there, or either in the hands of the hired hitmen of the ANC. And this branch is new in Abahlali, and they're saying, we are facing evictions. And then Cato Crest becomes a symbol to this branch to say, continue to resist. Because we've gone through this, we've been here, and we've managed to fight against this evil. And we won against it. And Cato Crest becomes the hope and advisor to that branch. So it is no longer a top-down type of thing where there's somebody who's in leadership who says, you can do this. But it's somebody sitting next to you in a General Assembly said, we've managed to fight against this. So when people come and become solutions and give advice to others, because people have been undermined as if they can't think, and therefore that thinking that they have, because they recognize and they define their own dignity, because that dignity has been not recognized by the state. So when they are at a space like a General Assembly, at a community meeting where they can raise their voice and speak and share ideas, and those ideas can be used in their struggle. Where, for instance, in Ekenana, that's why I'm saying Ekenana becomes a symbol of hope, because it wasn't the National Council or the Provincial Council of Abahlali that says, start a communal garden. They sit around and say, what can we do now? We've occupied, we have land now. We've won in court, but what can we do now? And then somebody said, let's start a communal, let's assist each other, because the government doesn't want us. And I think it's that thinking that can get us somewhere and fill up that cup, that we are going to say, we are the only one who can get ourselves out of the situation that we are in, because we understand what poverty means, and that what makes us to be poor. And therefore, let's forget about anything else. Let's do things on our own. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm mindful of the time, and I'm very, very sorry we're running out of time. I know there were a lot of hands, but I'm going to allow for just one comment, and then we'll get to a chance to engage with Uvangeli Notapelo during the performance. So while we're giving some time for that one comment, I'm going to announce the next 2 parts of the program. The next one is a virtual exhibition introduction by Sylvia Augustinson, and then a performance by Uyonela Mnana. While Uyonela and the band are playing, we're going to have a walk about to view the exhibition. And maybe this is me to just say thank you so much, for bearing with me. I'm really sorry for not keeping to the time, but the conversation was just so wonderful. Thank you, Mama Makosazana Klaba. Thank you, Vangile Ganjo. Thank you, Tapelo. Thank you to everyone who's here at the venue, and also all the people joining us through the live stream. So thank you so much. And what I take away from this is that all people think. So we're now going to move to the next part of the program. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Augustinsson, and I'm a project manager at the Swedish Institute in Stockholm. The photo exhibition Pamoja, Together Change is Possible, is a supplement to the whole project Pamoja, and with the aim to promote the digital platform Pamoja, which is a collaboration between Lily's Leaf Trust, 10 countries in Africa, initiated by the Swedish Embassy in South Africa. The photo exhibition presents 20 advocates from 10 countries in Africa, appointed by the Swedish embassies in those countries. The advocates have in common the beliefs that solidarity creates change. At the Pamoja web platform, you can read more about commitments to the decolonization and national liberation and the role Sweden has played. We can, of course, draw lessons about the history, but in the portraits, we focus on the now and the challenge of today. The portraits represent several different forms of activism and solidarity across a broad spectrum of areas. They show that engagement is widespread. Several are young, and many issues received broad support, while others battle against the current situation.
to work through their sounds. And I'm sure Nizo's join, all right? I guess it's a mess. Maibuya Africa. Abantwana, beya Africa. Bakalela izwe ilathathwa ngabamhlophe ilathathwa asizameni abantwana bakhalela bakhalela izwe asilikhalele ilathathwa ngabam ilathathwa mabawege umhlaba mabawege umhlaba mabasnike Baba we kumhlaba we Baba we Baba we go. Sisawufuna umhlaba kodwa. Hayi asingafuna umhlaba wethu, yazi kungcono sizithole thina kuqala. Sizwe ngathi masingayikhulumi kahle ngeEnglish akusiyithi. Istruggle sethu sesizikhuluma ngama codes nama what. We are very thankful of the Forge and the Embassy for recognizing the work. And we'd like also to recognize imisebenzi that our elders have left behind. One of the social activists was ubaba umkhulu umalume uBrahim. Talking about one of our transports. Ngoma yabasebenzi le. It says there's a train that comes from Zambia and Mozambique. There's a train that comes from Botswana and Swaziland and Lesotho. This train carries all young black Africans from Central and Southern African countries to come and walk on the gold and mineral mines of Johannesburg and its surrounding metropolis. 15 hours or more for almost no pay. This train carries young and old African mineral workers to come and work for almost no pay. come and work for almost no pay. We always come and work for almost no pay, all days. Lord. Lord. Deep, 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 deep down in the belly of the earth, these men were digging and shoveling for that old, evasive mighty shite. But when they sit in that funky, filthy barracks and hostels, to think about their loved ones they never see again. For they might have been wantonly murdered in the dead of the night by their roving and rolling gangs of no particular origin. To think about their houses and their cars and their cattle that have been wantonly murdered in the dead of night with the guns and the tear gas and the cannon and the Gatling. And each time they see that choo-choo train jumping, rushing, moving, sliding, and moving, and now walking, and now shaking, and now steaming, and moving, and now they go say, "What? They curse the coal train. The coal train that brought them to Johannesburg.